This is Nancy. Looks like we're ready. So the title of this presentation is Usher Syndrome, 100 Years of Discovery. And as I mentioned before, I'm with the Usher Syndrome Coalition. Next slide, please. I thought I'd give you a little bit of information about my background. I have worked for the coalition since 2015 as the director of the registry and outreach. I also work for Ava's Voice, another nonprofit that works with children who have Usher syndrome and their families. I was a professor at Malloy College, a local college, teaching American Sign Language for health professionals. And I was at the Helen Keller National Center for 38 years in various capacities. So I have a long history in working with the deafblind community. And some of the first individuals that I met with Usher syndrome were some of my first teachers of American Sign Language. So it's great to be involved with this community for such a long time. And I thank you for including me in it. Next slide. So the coalition has been around since 2008, and it was established by parents who have a young daughter who's now not so young, who had recently been diagnosed with Usher syndrome. Mark and Julia Dunning and others were looking for resources and other parents. They were also looking for researchers who were working to find either treatments or cure for the vision loss and hearing loss associated with Usher syndrome. Not finding a cohesive community, they decided to try and put one together. And thus the coalition was born. We, as far as I know, are the only organization that focuses exclusively on Usher syndrome worldwide. We include individuals of all ages, all types, and all subtypes of Usher syndrome. And our primary goal is to find the community, to identify everyone with Usher, and to raise awareness about Usher syndrome. We also, we have the community, and then we're also trying to identify researchers who work with the community and to serve as the bridge between the Usher community and researchers. I want to clarify that we do not fund research. That's not our job. It's not our goal. Our most important resource is the Usher community, the individuals themselves. So we focus on building that community by providing information, resources, and support. Next slide. So I have a few pet peeves that I'd like to get over with in the beginning of the presentation. I call it my style sheet because I've read many articles about Usher, and I think if we as a field are consistent, it helps. So it is Usher syndrome, not Ushers, apostrophe S, just Usher. And unless the word syndrome is used in a title or the beginning of a sentence, it's lowercase. You'll also see it referred to as capital USH, USH, 1B, 2A, etc. Or you'll hear it referred to as Usher type 1 or 2 or whatever. So it's the apostrophe S and the lowercase s that will help us to remain consistent in our field. Next slide. So these are the areas that I'll be talking about this morning. First one is, what is Usher syndrome? What is the population estimates? Let's have an overview of Usher syndrome. What are some of the challenges of providing services and even finding individuals? And then I have many slides on practical considerations for practitioners, individuals who work with the community. And finally, resources that are available through the coalition and our partners. Next slide. So what is Usher syndrome? I was surprised when I came to the coalition 5 years ago to learn a little bit more than I had known as a practitioner. Next slide, please. The history of Usher syndrome. It's been around or known about for more than 100 years. Although it was named in 1914 by Dr. Charles Usher, who was a Scottish ophthalmologist, there were others before him who were putting together the fact that as ophthalmologists, they had patients coming to them who were also deaf and who had several deaf siblings, and all of them had the same eye condition, retinitis pigmentosa, or RP. So finally, in 1914, Dr. Usher studied 69 cases and put it all together. Now, of course, this was before genetics, so I consider everyone in this list, Albert von Graf and Richard Liebrich in Berlin, I consider them all brilliant detectives who just took the information and the people in front of them and deduced that there was something going on here that was more than just happenstance. Next slide, please. So Usher syndrome expresses as a sensory neural hearing loss. It is usually present at birth, can be present a little bit later as we hear individual stories, but it is sensory neural hearing loss, meaning that the nerve is gone, not functioning. Vision loss is caused by RP, retinitis pigmentosa, and that occurs slowly, even though the gene is there and it's ready to express on its own little timetable. Two subtypes have vestibular issues or balance issues. And the fourth bullet is that there is no associated intellectual disability. I started adding this to my presentation about a year or a year and a half ago, because I found that when I went out to the general public, they hear deaf, blind, congenital from birth. There must be something associated with that in terms of an intellectual disability, and there is not. So I put that out there so that we can start to change people's perceptions. It is the most common genetic cause of combined vision and hearing loss, and it is one of 7,000 rare diseases. Next slide. As I've alluded to, there are three major types: Usher 1, Usher 2, and Usher 3. Makes it easy to remember. Underneath those major types are 10 subtypes, which we'll go into. And I just also want to clarify, there's no type 4. Back in the 80s, I remember there being discussion about a type 4 Usher syndrome that had an intellectual disability associated with it. And within the past year or so, I read a research paper saying that there was a type 4. Our science committee disagrees with that, and it's not officially recognized on the hereditary hearing loss website, the link that I have on this slide. So when you get a copy of this presentation, the hyperlink is in there so you can check for yourself and learn about the different genes that are associated with Usher syndrome. Next slide. So type 1 is indicated by a profound hearing loss at birth, capital D, deaf, but I have small d here because they haven't yet necessarily been identified as culturally deaf. The subtypes in Usher type 1 are 1B, C, D, F, and G. You'll notice that there is no type A. Researchers had originally said, oh yeah, there's a type A, but then they found out that there was no A, so rather than renaming all of the subsequent ones, they just said, forget about it, we'll get rid of A and go on with B. It represents about, it is represented in about 40 to 45% of the Usher community. And the retinitis pigmentosa associated with type 1 is the most aggressive. So it's early onset RP. I was on a call last night with moms and dads who have children with Usher, and some of them even said they noticed difficulty seeing at night in their very, very young children before the age of 2. There are vestibular or balance problems with Usher 1. Interestingly, this is the part that I kind of knew before I started with the coalition, but it's become clear to me that Usher type 1C has a French-Canadian or Acadian connection. And you will find a large group of individuals with 1C down in Louisiana in the Lafayette area. There's a hyperlink on this slide that will bring you to a YouTube video about an individual of Acadian heritage. Type 1F, as in Frank, is more common in those of Ashkenazi or European Jewish heritage. And we find that in the Jewish community, there's a lot of encouragement for people of Jewish heritage to marry those with Jewish heritage to maintain the culture, the religion, the language, and the values. Also within the Acadian community, there's a lot of intermarriage in a strong deaf community. So that's why we see the numbers kind of stay stable, and why those genes continue in that gene pool. I want to point out that Usher 1F is a rarer version of type 1. And we're particularly looking for individuals with 1F right now because we want to work with the Usher 1F Collaborative, and they are starting a natural history study. So just briefly, a natural history study finds people who have a certain type or subtype of any syndrome or disease, and they plot the natural progression of vision loss, hearing loss, and balance over the course of many years in as many people as possible. And so what they can do then is say, when a child is born, oh, it's most likely that their vision will be such and such at this age, their hearing will be such and such at this age, and their balance will progress or not progress. That's what natural history does. And it's important to know about the natural history of the subtypes, because when the researchers come into the picture and they try a treatment, a medication, gene therapy, how will they know that that's working if they don't know what the natural progression is? So they'll compare the natural progression of a disease with the progression using the intervention, and then they'll be able to say it's working, it's not working, or it's doing nothing. So as you go around your day-to-day work with the Usher community, if you find people with 1F, please do send them our way. Next slide. So the implications for those of you who are service providers, if you're working with the older generation, you will see that those with type 1 are culturally deaf. Many use ASL and then transition to tactile ASL. And then haptics and protactile have become important, either paralinguistic methods or a language, as in protactile's case, to keep communication open and as at a high level as possible. The younger generation of type 1, quite interestingly, are being implanted at very young ages with cochlear implants. They function orally, but we do need to remember that when the devices come off, they are profoundly deaf. We also need to remember that even though they may be able to hear when they have their CIs on, in dark environments with their CIs off, they are deafblind. Because of the balance issues associated with Usher type 1, parents report all the time that their child is late in learning to sit, in learning to walk. And as adults, I've heard many, many stories of adults walking with their cane down Main Street on their home community, and maybe someone will come by them or a police officer will pull up, and they get, of course, it's confusing interacting because of communication issues, but basically it's assumed that they're drunk because their gait is wobbly from one side to another. And that, of course, is the vestibular issue manifesting. We found over the years that balance may improve with athletics. I know of two young boys, Gavin and Ethan, who are Paralympic level swimmers, and that has tremendously improved their balance, their core muscles. I know of others who have taken to horseback riding, and that has been a terrific assist for helping with the balance issues as they get older. Next slide, please.
Okay, can you hold on one, Nancy? We're going to do a little switch of the interpreters here.
Sure.
Let's just make sure we got her in, me out. You're good to go.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, so Usher syndrome type 2, that is the most common type in the Usher community, especially Usher type 2A. There's also 2C and 2D. You'll notice there's no 2B, and 2B was not 2B because it was an error in diagnosis. And so they just eliminated it and continued down the alphabet. This exhibits as a moderate to severe, non-progressive, high-frequency hearing loss. The RP is evident in teen years, not as early as with Usher type 1, and there are no balance problems associated with Usher type 2. You will have a hyperlink as the last part of this particular slide that will bring you to the story of Brendan, who has Usher type 2A. Next slide, please. So the implications for those of you who are working with the community is that this group usually functions orally with an O and orally with an AU and visually. So they may have hearing aids, or they probably have hearing aids. And as they get older, we have noticed that the older type 2 community, and older I mean as they get into their 50s or 60s, many switch over to a cochlear implant. While in school, these children have usually been mainstreamed all along with supports, and this group can be particularly invisible because they function so well with their hearing aids, and because the vision issues, as I mentioned, come along a little bit later. So it is not unusual for us to get emails or calls from adults in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s who are just finding out that they have Usher type 2. Now, of course, with genetic testing, there's even prenatal genetic testing, which is kind of rocking our world at the coalition. We've received emails and calls from maybe 2 or 3 families who are expecting a baby, and through prenatal testing have discovered that their child has Usher syndrome type 2. So they are reaching out to find out, what will my baby be like? What will they be able to hear? What will their future look like? So we do our best to connect these new parents with other parents. And we also happen to have a mom of a child with 2A who is also an audiologist. So she can explain Usher type 2 from the perspective of a professional and the perspective of a parent, which is very, very helpful. Those with type 2 usually have their careers in their chosen field. Many, because they weren't diagnosed until later on, haven't put any limitations or expectations on where they're going to go. And it's not until the vision loss hits that critical point where they can no longer function well or safely visually that they end up in the ophthalmologist's office and discover that they have Usher syndrome. Next slide, please. And Usher type 3 is the most recent gene to be found. There are two types under type 3, 3A and 3B. It is the most rare of the three types, and it exhibits as someone who is basically born functionally sighted and hearing, and they have a progressive hearing and vision loss. Some research indicates that in about 50% of those with Usher 3, there is also a balance issue, and that is progressive. It's more common in those of Finnish and Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. And I've included a hyperlink to a presentation by our most famous person with Usher type 3, and that is Rebecca Alexander, who's a wonderful ambassador, educator. She's done lots of presentations, even a TED Talk. So she's a great person to bring awareness about Usher syndrome to the general community. I want to focus, if you will, on Usher 3B for a minute. So 3B, it's even still questionable in the scientific community as to whether 3B is actually Usher or if it's something else. However, Dr. Ed Stone in Iowa, he's a world-renowned researcher. He identified in two young people, the mother is a friend of mine, the Usher 3B gene. This was just last year. So these are siblings who have 3B. And the mom is of Indian heritage. Prior to this family being identified, it had only been seen in families of Amish heritage. So this new family of Indian heritage was outside of what researchers had known about. So Nilam, N-I-L-A-M, has joined forces and is a representative for the coalition now. She really wants to find others with 3B, but interestingly, I was reviewing a biography on a woman I've known for many years in the Usher community, and she recently did genetic testing. She's of Indian heritage, and she disclosed that she has 3B. So now we have three people of Indian heritage with 3B. This is the reason why we need to bring the community together. It's one of the reasons. There are still about 20% of individuals out there whose gene has not yet been identified. So 80% of the genes we know about, 20% maybe not. So we need everybody to, who's interested, to come forward and hopefully get genetic testing so that we can learn the full scope of Usher syndrome, because we don't want any one person to be left living alone thinking that they are the only one. We want to build the Usher community and be able to support and educate and bring together and empower the community. And it happens one family and one individual at a time. Next slide, please. So the implications for type 3 is that this is another group that's functioning orally and visually. They can also be overlooked or hidden in classroom settings. They often have hearing aids, but again, as the vision and hearing progress, cochlear implants are an option. And I'm sure you realize this, but as the vision gets worse, sometimes people with type 2 or type 3 think that they are losing hearing. And they may not be losing hearing. It could just be that they're now no longer able to read lips or speech read. So that's something to keep in mind if someone is experiencing additional vision loss or difficulty speech reading or lip reading. Again, that would be a flag to get their vision tested. Students with type 3 would be mainstreamed in a regular, typical classroom with supports. The diagnosis of Usher type 3 has been, I'd say, early 20s to 30s, but now with genetic testing, it's happening much earlier. And again, when it impacts the career or schooling, that's when most people will go to their doctor and find out that they have Usher type 3. Next slide, please. And then, because nothing has just neat and clean categories, there is atypical Usher syndrome. And that is where a person is tested, the Usher gene is there, but they either just have hearing loss or they just have vision loss. Okay, so deaf with no vision loss, RP with no hearing loss, but the Usher gene is there. And for some reason, the symptoms do not fully express, or they're just absent. Okay, next slide, please. We also have to remember that everyone who has RP and is deaf may not have Usher syndrome. So RP exists in the hearing world. It's very common in the blind community, and someone could have hearing loss associated with, not associated with the RP. And there are so many other causes of deafness, such as high fever, encephalitis, CMV, ototoxicity, and other congenital reasons. But genetic testing is really the only way to verify that a person definitely has Usher syndrome. But again, all those genes have not yet been identified, so we need to keep finding the community and getting the testing done and continue to work with researchers. Next slide, please. So before the age of genetics, which really, even though the genes have been identified since 1995, up until last year, genetic testing was expensive. It was not available to everyone. It was hard to find, and there were even stories that we've heard where an older adult would go in and ask their doctor, I think I'd like genetic testing to know if I definitely have Usher syndrome. And they would be discouraged from having the test because the doctor would say, so how is that going to change your life? Why is that important? So that's a whole other discussion. But now, so back then, a diagnosis was basically done phenotypically, and that's a word that I learned through my work at the coalition, and it basically means how the person presents or what they appear to be. So when I worked at Helen Keller, my office at one point was in the library, and people would come in and introduce themselves, and they would go through, yes, I was born deaf, and I started having problems at night, and I have balance problems, I'm losing my peripheral vision, and it's funny, my brother has that, my sister has that. So that's a phenotypical or clinical diagnosis. It's based on family history, observation, and symptoms. And that's how we did it for years. Next slide, please. Back, yeah. There we go. Oop. One more. And one more. There we go. So after the identification of Usher genes and the availability of genetic testing, I want you all to know that free genetic testing is available through the Foundation Fighting Blindness. An individual just has to have their healthcare professional verify that that person has an inherited retinal disease, and there are some other criteria, and they will send the kit out, and the person can submit, I believe it's a spit test. Back it goes, and they get a diagnosis. Newborn hearing screenings have been a tremendous boon for diagnosing Usher syndrome, and it's not necessarily because of the audiologists or doctors who get the results and present it to the families. It's Dr. Google and curious parents. We've heard the story again and again. A child fails a newborn hearing screening, goes again, fails, they're profoundly deaf. And then they go home, the parents go home and say, there's no deafness in my family. I wonder what caused this. And they research and they see that Usher syndrome is on the list. And maybe their child is having a little trouble learning to sit up. And maybe they're, as they get older, they're a late walker. And at some point, the parents say, you know, I'd really like to be tested for this Usher syndrome, or my child to be tested. So we're getting people registering their child at 5 months, and they've been genetically diagnosed with Usher syndrome. So genetic testing is a game changer, and it also can help the child to get the supports and services that they need right from the get-go. Prenatal genetic testing, as I mentioned, can also be done in the Jewish community. They also have genetic testing of young people to find out if they're carriers. So that in some of the more conservative Jewish communities, I've learned that there is a person within that community who has the results of the genetic testing. And if two young people start dating and they have been already identified as carriers, they may discourage that couple from moving forward in the relationship. So lots of interesting aspects to knowing about the genetics and all the screening that's available. And then, of course, as we mentioned in Louisiana, the Cajun community, there are some families that have multiple generations of Usher type 1C, where parents had it, they married, had children. Of course, all of their children will have Usher syndrome. That's the only gene they have to pass on. Second generation marries a spouse with Usher 1C, and then a third generation comes about. So that would be another way to diagnose, but that's phenotypically. Again, we would look for genetic testing, but it'd be a good guess. Next slide, please. So how many people are out there? Where is the population? Okay, next slide, please. So the researchers themselves are not as helpful as we hoped they would be. Researchers' estimates range from between 1 in 17,000 births to 1 in 6,000 births. And I'm quoting that just for the United States, okay? We're gonna just look at the USA. So based on the 2018 census of 327 million people, million in the United States, using those ratios, there would be between 20,000 and 50 to 55,000 people in the United States with Usher syndrome. So hold on to that number for a second, and let's go to the next slide. You can also look at it as looking at a percentage of those who are born deaf or hard of hearing. So there are researchers who have said, oh yeah, about 3 to 6% of children who are born deaf, the cause of their deafness is Usher syndrome. Other researchers have said, oh no, it's higher than that. It's about 8 to 10% of children who are born deaf or hard of hearing. So if we take those numbers and we go to the next slide, and we take a sample year of 2018, where there were 252,000 babies born who were deaf or hard of hearing. And if we look at the birth to 21 age group, the educational years, and if we say, okay, 3 to 10% of those babies born and between the ages of birth to 21, 3% of that number would be 7,560 kids birth to 21 who have Usher syndrome, and 10% of that number would mean 25,000 children birth to 21. Now these numbers are fairly high. Next slide, please. You can also look at it as, so Usher syndrome is not a virus like the congenital rubella syndrome group. It's not based on a toxicity or an environmental factor. It's in the gene pool, so the numbers should fluctuate just according to the birth rate. And if the life expectancy in the United States is 80 years, and you take those numbers between 20,000 and 50,000 that I told you to hold on to several slides ago, and you just divide that by 80 for a life expectancy of 80, then roughly 250 to 625 babies should be born with Usher syndrome. Now, this is all according to numbers, estimates. Next slide. In employment age, for those of you who are looking ahead to transition age and working with the older community, if we look at the employment ages of 18 to 62, and you multiply that birth rate of 250 a year times 44 years of employment work eligibility, that would mean that there should be 11,000 employment age adults with Usher, or using the higher estimate, 27,000 employment age adults with Usher. So these numbers are in the tens of thousands. Next slide, please. So what do we actually know?
Nancy, can you hold on?
Yep, I sure can.
Thanks.
And interpreters, I should have checked before. Is my speed okay? And for those who are using the interpreters, okay, good. Good. Okay. So as you well know, each state DeafBlind project submits a child count every year on December 1st. And if we look at those child counts, we look back to 2018, where there were roughly 11,000 deafblind children served nationally by all of the states and territories. 345 children were reported with Usher syndrome. Let that sink in, 345. That is way, way, way below the number that we just looked at in terms of what researchers tell us we should be able to expect. Now, if you want to look on the positive side, 345 was a slight increase that we've seen over the past 6 years. And the largest increase in those numbers, not surprisingly, is children with Usher type 1. In the beautiful state of Minnesota, there were 18 reported in 2018. Next slide. So the Usher Syndrome Coalition, we have a registry. It's international. As I said, we include anybody and everyone with Usher syndrome worldwide. We call it the Ush Trust because we feel that trust is the most important thing that you can share within the community. So as of early this month, we had over 1,600 people, 100. And remember, tens of thousands in the United States? We have 1,600 registered worldwide from 64 countries. In the United States, just over 1,000. In the state of Minnesota, children and adults, 30. 7 children under the age of 21. And the breakdown of the subtypes is there on the slide as well. Minimal numbers of type 1, 1B, 2, 2A, 2C, and 7 who had unknown type or they just didn't report it. Of the 30 that we have in the state of Minnesota, 17 confirmed that they had had genetic testing, and so they knew that they had Usher. Next slide. So what are some of the challenges we as a community are dealing with? Next slide, please. Where is everyone? All right, that is my question as I go around the country and as I talk to anyone and everyone who will listen to me. Most medical professionals, honestly, still don't know about Usher. Children with Usher are mainstreamed in their local schools with supports. So they have hearing aids or cochlear implants that mitigate the hearing loss. The vision issues may not be serious or not yet diagnosed, and School time is daytime, so most of them are functioning visually fine in regular light. It's possible that as the child gets into their teen years, someone knows that there's a vision loss and a hearing loss, but whether or not that is Usher syndrome, not sure. Or the parents know, but they haven't told the child yet. And that's a whole other issue, because parents are desperate to know, when should I tell my child? How should I tell my child? And what do I say? So we have a lot of work to do together. As I mentioned before, we still get contacted weekly with adults who are just finding out that they have Usher syndrome, and they think, I must be the only one. I've never heard of Usher syndrome before. So thankfully, we have the internet, and they find their way to us or one of the other service providers. I've learned that some cultures are protective of people with disabilities, and sometimes the attitude is, hey, if there's no cure, why bother? It's not going to change my day-to-day life, so I'm just going to keep going on. I don't care what the cause is. Next slide, please. Usher is invisible, okay, because there's no intellectual disability, and I have met the most clever, the most adaptive, the most brilliant, if you will, people in the Usher community who just kind of plod forward. They lose a little vision. Oh, I can handle that. I can change it. I don't even have to tell anyone. And because it's a slow and progressive vision loss, and because it's under-identified, individuals just keep plodding along, doing their thing. Also, we've learned that the profile of learners who have Usher is very different from those who are born congenitally deafblind from other causes. And many kids with Usher are still thriving. They're doing great. Next slide. So the community, when we're doing outreach, some of the challenges and some of the blessings are, it's a very diverse community. But in this particular slide, I mean diverse in terms of methods of communication. So in doing outreach, we have spoken languages, we have sign languages, tactile sign language, print, large print, braille. For web-based communication, we need captions, image descriptions, and text transcripts. Next slide. Usher equals constant change. The vision loss is progressive. The natural history studies have not all been done, so right now, vision loss is unpredictable. We can't say, oh yeah, you have Usher type 2, you can expect to lose X degrees of vision at certain age. And it fluctuates depending on the weather sometimes. I've had friends who say, you know, cloudy weather is better, obviously. High sunshine in the summer, there's glare, difficulty. Fatigue is a huge issue and can influence a person's ability to function visually. The strategies that worked yesterday may not work tomorrow because of all of those factors. So for interpreters, you may be interpreting at a distance so that someone with restricted visual fields can keep you in their field of vision. And then a person may say, you know what, I need to hold on to your wrist so that I can keep your signs in my visual field. They may then go to tactile. They may go back and forth between tactile and tracking. And then as the vision becomes less and less reliable, they may ask for haptics, which are touch signals that have been standardized, and they're used on the back and upper shoulders. Same applies for print materials. There may be a need to change to high contrast, a larger font. Or I listened to parents last night who have their young children starting Braille. That was unheard of in the older generation. So it's a very different community that's coming up the pike. And as I mentioned before, as vision loss progresses, speech reading may be affected, and that may lead to misdiagnosis as an additional hearing loss when it's actual the vision that's going. Next slide. Practical considerations. So for those of you who are practitioners, next slide. Just a few suggestions. The impact on learning in the classroom setting and communication. So these are taken from students with Usher syndrome and adults that I've known and met with. So preferential seating, assistive listening devices, visual accessibility, as simple as no glare, don't have the teacher stand by the window, adequate lighting in the classroom, the use of note takers, interpreters, and access to materials in large print. Students with Usher can appear to be typical learners, and often the teachers think they're doing just fine. Last night, I heard from a mom whose children are now getting distance learning from COVID, and the mother is very active, well-versed in her children's IEP, and now she sees that even though everything is written into the IEP, the teachers are kind of at a loss. Okay, my child needs this in large print. Oh, I don't have it. Can they read something else? That was an exact quote that the mother had from the teacher as the mother sits with the child in front of the computer. There are differences between what we hope for the children and what maybe the academic world is able to do. No finger pointing, it's more of let's bring these issues to light and see how we can support both sides, everyone, because in the end, everyone wins. And then interveners, it's a common support for students who are deafblind, mostly those who have intellectual disabilities or other comorbidities, other either physical or health issues. But what about academic interveners for students with Usher? Many students with Usher are academically on target. Some are even in higher level classes, but an academic intervener may be someone who can kind of mitigate the fatigue process or the materials or just helping them to get through the typical curriculum. Next slide. The big questions and that we're hoping to get, I'll be bringing out next week when I present at the DeafBlind Summit. We hope to get researchers who are not necessarily looking into the genetics, looking into the practical aspects. So Braille, should Braille be introduced and when? Should we give hard copies or electronic documents and in what format? Should orientation and mobility services be introduced and when? What are the criteria, the indicators? And that's for school and work. The fact that children may need time for their eyes to adjust to various lighting conditions, from outside into a building, from inside a building outside, and it may take as long as a few minutes for that adjustment to happen. If someone is using an interpreter or lip reading, they may need preferential seating in meetings. And just a reminder that night blindness, I hate that term, it doesn't only happen at night, it can happen in the hallway, it can happen in the gym, it can happen in evening events, socialized events where there's poor lighting. And also, the young folks keep saying, look, we don't want to just be going to school. It's exhausting to do that. But we want to be in on socialization. We want to know about the gossip. That's my term, not theirs. Like who's dating whom and what's the current thing to wear and how should I wear my hair and all the other things that teenagers are so curious about. They want to be included. And they also want access to incidental learning. Next slide, please. So technology has been terrific in helping to bring the Usher community into a position of equity. And it's good to become familiar with that. I'm hoping that we'll get some resources. Maybe Ryan will mention the great video series that HKNC has on assistive technology in ASL with captions and voice. Preferential seating again, visual fatigue, auditory fatigue, and figuring out class schedules, proximity to lockers so that kids with Usher can change their books, etc. throughout the day easily. And also planning for the unplannable. What happens when a device malfunctions? The processor dies, a battery dies, do we have backup? Next slide. Options for communications with teachers. I have a list of various things that we need to take into consideration. And of course, now with distance learning, there are all sorts of forums talking about what's better, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, or do I use a video phone, or do I hire an interpreter? How do I get captions? What meeting platforms are accessible? Let's not forget the National DeafBlind Equipment Distribution Program, also known as ICANN Connect, which provides free telecommunication devices to individuals who are deafblind from ages 5 up to those who qualify financially. And I also want to bring to your attention a webinar that we did in 2017 with parents, myself, and NCDB. It's long, but it's got a lot of information, educational considerations for students with Usher syndrome. Next slide. Environmental markers, marking on stairs, vibrating systems, emergency evacuation, the X on the back. No questions asked. We're leaving. I'll tell you where we're going when we get to a safe place. A year or more ago, an active shooter plan would have been something that we discussed. Now it seems to have taken the back seat to COVID, but it certainly is indicative of when the environment changes, we need to change as well to make sure that kids with Usher and all deafblind kids are included. Next slide. And then the coalition, my beloved agency, what resources do we have for you? Next slide. So, number one is the registry. We want to find everyone. I am the keeper of that information. We don't share it with anyone. We make introductions anonymously. I will introduce people on the registry to an outside resource. It's totally up to them if they want to reach out or not. Researchers tell us if we don't have enough people to participate in clinical trials, that's it. We won't be able to do it. So those who are hoping, and I know in the deaf community, I've heard from many who say, if I can just maintain my vision, you know, if I could improve it, that'd be great. If I can maintain my vision, that happens working with researchers. So the more people we have for clinical trials, the higher our opportunities will be to work with the research community. We are the bridge. We remain neutral. We know the values of the deaf community, the deafblind community, the hearing community, the blind community. We try and stay on top of the values and discussion. Our job is just to inform, and you make informed decisions. Next slide. We collaborate with National Center on Deafblindness, NCDB, the National Family Association for Deafblind, HKNC, the State Deafblind Projects, and the rare disease community. I do that through participation in various committees, and that's what kind of brought me here. Next slide, please. Ava's Voice is a partner of the Usher Syndrome Coalition. And last year, I also worked for Ava's Voice last year. I'm proud to say we ran the first ever camp for youth with Usher syndrome in upstate New York. We did a pilot program, and it was life-altering. We hoped to do it this year, but COVID put a halt to that. We are looking and keeping our fingers crossed for next year. We also are planning to set up family weekends, Ush Hangouts, which is the one-day camp at the Usher Syndrome Coalition in-person conference, which will be in Austin, Texas, God willing. next July. And Ava's Voice is now, because it's run by parents, organized by parents, coming up with great, and I say great, educational materials, guides, cheat sheets for students, teachers, and parents. So the hyperlinks are there. Take a look. The Usher Syndrome Society is doing, the Usher Syndrome Society is doing photojournalism and video journalism. They just released a new feature called Sense Stories, which are interviews, remote interviews with people with Usher syndrome of all ages around the world. There was a question as to whether people from Minnesota can participate in the Ush Family Weekends. We welcome everyone, everyone. And you can go on the Ava's Voice website for more information. Hear, See, Hope. It raises awareness and funds research. I mentioned the Usher 1F Collaborative, and that's hoping to do a natural history study. And then we also partner with Ush Kids UK in England, and they are bringing families together there. Next slide. Ush Talks are short webcasts about Usher syndrome and related topics. We will be adding all of our presentations from our amazing virtual conference on there. Before Krista Vasi, VASI, our executive director, goes out on maternity leave next month. I highly encourage you to look for those presentations. They are ridiculous, great, ridiculous. There's an Ush blog by parents, youth, researchers, etc. Take a look. It goes back for many, many years. There's a wealth of information there for you. Next slide. One of my passions and goals, personally and professionally, is to include information in American Sign Language, which was sadly non-existent about Usher syndrome. So in 2017, I'm proud to say that I and a colleague with Usher Type 1B created a series of 25 first ever videos that are captioned and have a text transcript in ASL about Usher syndrome. It's like the 25 top questions. Kevin is the gentleman who did them. And when he did his personal story, which was video number 11, he got over 37,000 hits and over 500 shares. In our world, that's viral. So take a look. Ush Talks, we had 3 of them that are related to the signing community, translated by top signers from Gallaudet. Very proud of that work. And all of our productions have video captions and text transcripts. Next slide. We're building the community with a new initiative called Ush Ambassadors. You will hear from 2 of our ambassadors today. They are volunteers who represent the Usher Coalition in their state or country. They reach out, they're your point person. I work very part-time for the coalition, and we are building a grassroots community, one state at a time. I encourage you to reach out to Trevor and Maya and to build your already incredible Usher community within Minnesota. We are growing also internationally, and we have India, Canada, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. We're just adding France. Okay, next slide. And I'm almost done, so we can get to questions. We have an annual conference that travels around the country. Many individuals, many families, that's where they meet someone else with Usher syndrome for the first time. They also learn about research, and we are expanding our presentations to include topics outside of research. So you can go to our website, and we'll be putting up information in January. We have a private Google forum. We have over 500 people in it. I manage it. It's called the Ush Blue Book, where people can share their experiences, ask questions, provide information and support. Genetic testing resources. I think we're going to do an interpreter switch. Jennifer's ready, thank you. Genetic testing resources. There's a hyperlink in this slide that will bring you to our page that talks about the free genetic testing initiative I mentioned before. And for parents of children with Usher syndrome, last night we had our first family to family community call just for parents. And it's where parents get to learn from each other, share resources, share their stories. It's a great method of support. Next slide. We are building our outreach to youth. Megan Lengel, Lengel, and Jessica Chaikoff, Chaikof. Both of these young women with Usher syndrome started an Usher syndrome Facebook page. They created a new section on our website and a blog. So this is for individuals 17 to 27 or thereabouts. Check the hyperlinks for more information. We're very proud of this initiative. Next slide. And social media. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And we just passed the 3rd Saturday of September, which is Global Usher Syndrome Awareness Day. Next slide. Please stay connected with us. I have the email addresses for Trevor and Maya, your Minnesota ambassadors, for myself, for our website, and for our Usher Trust Registry. Feel free to reach out to any of us. I also have a video phone number for anyone who would like to contact me directly, or a voice number. And that's all on our website. I thank you so much for your attention through this long presentation. And if there are any questions, let's have them.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the PowerPoint. So thank you thank you so much, Nancy. This has been really, really wonderful, and the information is just highly valuable. So I want to open it up to people. If they have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. Just type them in. Nancy is able to see the Q&A, and she can answer any questions. I found it very interesting, all of the genetic information. And then the thoughts that you had. I hadn't thought about if a person is hard of hearing and then you lose the ability to be able to see speech reading, that it can feel like you're losing your hearing, or you've lost more hearing. That makes a lot of sense. So, are there any questions coming in? If not, we're going to take a break. And I think, here we go.
This is asked by Catherine. Have you seen children with type 1? Is that Q? If it's type Q, no. We haven't gotten that far down in the alphabet. I have seen 1G listed. Let's see, E, F, G, but that's not on the official list. So my answer would be no. Okay, and Catherine is still typing. Wait. I will wait, Catherine, happily.
Just a quick question. Are you seeing numbers of people who perhaps, I know you're able to see the census or the child count, the DeafBlind child count with NCDB. Are you seeing more counted on NCDB than with the Usher Syndrome Coalition? I think you are.
Mrs. Nancy, in some states, they're just about on par, but there's no way for us to check to see if we have the same children or not. Yeah.
Okay.
Melissa asks, I have a student who has Usher type 1, but I was wondering if they don't know what subtype, should they go get retested to find out? How does that work? I always say it's a good idea to get tested, just to know for sure if it is Usher syndrome, because there can be other syndromes that look similar to Usher. To find out what subtype and to verify a diagnosis, you can go to the Foundation Fighting Blindness website, and they have information there. You can go to our website. I included the link in the PowerPoint. I can look that up real quickly. It's called Open Access Genetic Testing, and that would be a great way to find out. Okay. Have you seen, so Catherine asks, let's see, let me put that answer into, I'm typing the answer with the hyperlink for the question about diagnosis. So Catherine, have you seen kiddos with type 1 have issues with sleeping at night? I have a student with type 1, young, where the parents are struggling with the child sleeping at night. Have you seen that as an issue with children? I have not heard that specific situation reported. I've heard that children may have the fear of nighttime because, of course, their vision gets worse at night. So if it's based on the fear from the night blindness, that could be an issue, which could be remediated with lighting. There's lighting that responds to movement. Some parents have talked about that, putting night lights in the hallway. Maybe they're afraid they can't find their parents' room at night. I can also put you in touch with Ava's Voice, because I can put you in touch with other parents, but Ava's Voice and Carly and Pam, who run that, have a wealth of knowledge from the parents that they work with through that group. So if you'd like to contact me, I can make that connection, no problem. Okay, that would be great. Excellent. I'm putting my email address in the Q&A box. Anyone can use it, please. And Catherine, please reach out as well with your email address, and I will make the connection. Anyone else?
And just a quick reminder to everybody that all of the links are included in the PowerPoint. For the community of practice representatives, those PowerPoints are already uploaded in the shared drive. For those who are joining us just for the Usher Syndrome session this morning, I will be emailing that out to you. So you have all of those links that Nancy has generously shared with us, and please use them. And if you have any further questions, Nancy is great to reach out to, quick to email back. All the time, I think that's awesome. But you have a wealth of information and resources to share with people. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we also consider screening. And even if a child does not yet, I think we had this discussion last February, that even if a child does not yet meet the DeafBlind eligibility, that you can still, many of the children are identified deaf, hard of hearing and have services from a teacher of deaf, hard of hearing. But a teacher with a blind visually impaired could still be on the team to review those records, because for some children, vision changes rather rapidly, unexpectedly. And like you said, it could be fluctuating. So it's important to have people with that expertise on the team. Is that something that you would advise, or would you like to share more information about that?
This is Nancy. As early as possible is our mantra. So that the children don't feel like there's something wrong with them, so that they know that there are supports and services. And I've been told time and again by the young teens that I interact with, just ask us. We don't assume what we want or need. Ask us. You want supports? But if the supports are there and they know that they're there, then they can make a choice with their parents as to what's best for them. Yeah.
This is Anne speaking. I have worked with students who seem to be doing fine. And one of the things that I've brought up to them is that some of these adaptations, or even if they don't feel like they're needed, I placed it in the fact that it might make things more efficient for them, so that they're not having so much visual and auditory fatigue and can use that brain power to learn the information and to make the social connection. So that's how I phrased it with my students. Go ahead, Nancy.
And this is Nancy. I think it's beautiful that we have a panel of experts now that will be discussing their lives and their experiences. And for students who are young and awkward and maybe new to their diagnosis, these individuals can be terrific mentors and show them that, yeah, life goes on and we're fine and we're brilliant and we're having, living life to the fullest, and we adapt. And, so I think it's just wonderful that you'll be able to provide that support.
Well, thank you, Nancy. It's 10:30. Yep. So we're going to wrap up this section of the webinar.
Great.
You're welcome to stay and hear our panelists if you'd like to.
I will.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And then also for everybody else who's in the webinar, we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to come back at 10:45. This allows us time for the panelists to get situated and ready. So feel free to walk away from your computer. If you're not pacing back and forth by now, like me, like I have been, get up, move around, get some coffee, get some water. We want to have you ready for this great next part that actually is a great segue and perhaps an expansion of what Nancy has shared. So thank you all for being here for Nancy's portion. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone.
All right, take a break.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. So good morning. I hope you had a good break. We have 3 of the 4 panelists who will be joining us this morning, so you can see their faces. We've got Jessica Eggert, Maya Larson, and Trevor Turner, and Ryan Odlin will be joining us a bit closer to when he's going to be sharing his experiences. And then he also is going to be presenting about transition, specifically as it relates to the Helen Keller National Center and the wide range of services that they offer. So just wanted to say hello so you can see people's faces. And we are going to start with Maya. Each person has about 15 minutes to talk, to share their experiences, and also thinking about what would be most helpful for you all as teachers and supporting students who have Usher syndrome. The they'll be letting you know what type of Usher syndrome they had, what their experiences were, and what they may have noticed when they were younger, then the identification process, all of that. And then at the very end, they will be sharing specifically information that is helpful for you as a teacher supporting a student with Usher syndrome. So I'm going to go ahead and ask that Jessica and Trevor turn off their cameras. We'll leave Maya on. Oh, here's Ryan. Ryan, we are going to be turning off cameras while Maya is presenting. And then we are going to have you turn your camera on at the end, because that'll be a nice segue to your presentation related to transition and your role as the regional representative for HKMC. So we can go ahead and turn off your camera now that we have your face on the screen. So Maya is going to share her story. She's got about 15 minutes. If she feels she can show it all in 10 minutes, then we'll move on to Trevor. And that would leave us some time for questions at the end. But at this point, we might not have questions because a lot of this information is very interesting. Maya is one of the Minnesota ambassadors, and so she's going to share information about that. I'm going to turn it over to Maya now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anne. So my name is Maya Larson, as Anne said. So I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I was born here, grew up here, and I am currently a college student at Grinnell College in Iowa, but I'm doing remote learning from Minneapolis right now. And at Grinnell, I am in my junior year. I'm studying French and anthropology. Sort of just a little kind of bit about me, sort of random things. I really like to be outside. I love reading, writing, playing with my cat, you know, just sort of normal. What am I, 20 now? I just turned 20, so I still feel like a teenager, so it's a little weird. Yeah, but so I have type 2A for Usher syndrome. So if you're familiar with the Usher syndrome types, which I believe Nancy just went over, so type 2 is the one where you are born with sort of moderate to severe hearing loss. So I got really lucky and my hearing loss was caught on my newborn hearing screen when I was born. So pretty much, I want to say 3 months old or so on, I've had hearing aids. So at a very young age, I started, you know, doing speech therapy. I learned sign for a little bit before I sort of picked up English more and my parents decided to focus on that path. And after kindergarten, I was mainstream. So I was sort of in special ed programs and stuff for preschool and kindergarten, and then was mainstreamed at the public schools I went to in Minneapolis there on out. In regards to finding out about Usher syndrome, so as I'm sure all of our stories go, I'd always had a hard time seeing at night and seeing in low light, but I kind of just brushed it off. But finally, my mom sort of pushed me to bring it up at my annual eye exam, and thus ensued months upon months of testing and all sorts of stuff, which ended in me figuring out that I have retinitis pigmentosa, and then the genetic testing confirmed that it is Usher syndrome. So that's sort of a little bit about kind of how I found out about Usher. Oh, and I was 15 when that happened. I don't think I mentioned that. So I was in my sophomore year in high school. So talking a little bit about school and sort of my experiences being first a hard of hearing kid in school. So I had a DHH teacher, a deaf and hard of hearing teacher. I'm sure you all know that acronym. From pretty early on, I remember when I was like very little, I think there was someone from maybe the state or something who came and talked to my parents and, you know, gave them advice on how to get their rambunctious 3-year-old to keep her hearing aids in. And then starting in preschool, I had a DHH teacher that I would meet with, I think, once a day in preschool. And then throughout my whole K through 12 experience, I had a DHH teacher whom I worked with. They taught me, you know, a lot of really important necessary skills. I think the biggest thing was how to advocate for myself, which is a skill that's really helped me long term, and it's been able to help me as I've dealt with this changing vision loss as well. Kind of funny story, my DHH teacher in preschool, I hated her and I would crawl under my desk to not have to talk to her because I guess I was a really mean kid. But then she ended up being my DHH teacher in high school, and she actually was the woman who got me through my diagnostic process and everything, and she was such an important role in my life, and I'm so grateful for her. So sort of a little reminder that, you know, we don't always notice how important we are in people's lives, right? So yeah, in regards to my vision loss, so I didn't get my diagnosis until I was 15, as I said. So at that point, it was only affecting me visually at night, you know, the kind of thing where if I'd go to a movie with friends or something, they'd have to help me around. I wasn't seeing huge impacts in school. Looking back, I think I was just ignoring them because I was in a place where I'm sure everyone who has Usher can relate to this, just denial. You know, I didn't want to think about the fact I was going blind. I didn't want to process it. I wanted to have nothing to do with it. So I remember at one of my IEP meetings, we brought a teacher for the blind, and it just sort of ended up deciding not to add her onto my, I don't know if it was my IEP or what they wanted to add her, but yeah, but looking back, I think that could have been helpful for me. In regards to kind of what I noticed in the classroom that I was saying I sort of ignored, I think I was having a really hard time when teachers would turn off the lights to watch movies, or when we were younger, we would like turn off the lights to play games, which were just awful for me all the time. I also started having trouble reading smaller print, particularly reading serif fonts, so fonts where they kind of blend together a little bit. But again, I sort of just kind of ignored that at that stage in my life. Yeah, so in regard to what teachers did to help me and my parents and sort of the adults in my life, IEP meetings were huge. I started going to my own IEP meetings at a very young age, which at the time I found irritating, but looking back, I'm very grateful because I really learned who I am and what my disabilities are and everything through that, whereas I think a lot of times kids can kind of just float through not really understanding, and that was really beneficial for me personally. So I always encourage kids and parents and teachers to encourage students to go to their IEP meetings, even if it's for 5 minutes, to just say, I like this, I don't like this, my microphone is cool, the end, then go play in a quarter. That works, but just sort of getting kids involved is a really big part in my opinion. Yeah, I think another thing that teachers did to really help me, and this is sort of a big thing I talk about a lot with disability in general, is empathy. And I know that sounds so kind of like simple and whatever, but really just having empathy, in the sense of listening to kids at any age for what they're going through. I think a lot of times we don't know how to explain our disabilities to people because it's our reality, right? We don't know anything else. So I think it's really important to try to listen to your students and listen to what they're saying and not kind of put words in their mouth, even though you are experts, you are professionals, but every individual is so different. I think another part of that empathy piece is the diagnostic process. and after being diagnosed can be really tumultuous for anyone, but I think especially in your teenage years. At least that was my experience. So just being supportive for that. You know, like I said, my DHH teacher was phenomenal, and I'm really grateful that I had her during that time. Yeah, I think the one thing that I would want teachers to remember who are working with students who are deaf and hard of hearing or who might have Usher syndrome or something is just that point about empathy and really listening and sort of trying to figure out, you know, okay, what is this 5-year-old blabbing about and how can I sort of like relate it to real life, right? And I think, again, it was just so wonderful for me to have those adults in my life who are willing to listen to me and validate me and say, oh, okay, Maya, you're not seeing this well. Let's not brush it off. Let's find a way to fix it. And I think that was just hugely helpful for me. Yeah. Oh, and then also sort of last piece, which Nancy touched on a little bit. I'm an Usher ambassador for Minnesota. So I'm guessing she kind of explained it. I unfortunately was in class for that part. But basically we are sort of a resource, a point person for individuals, families, organizations in Minnesota who either want to know more about Usher syndrome, get educated about Usher syndrome, or find support. So maybe find a parent group of parents with Usher syndrome, or find, for me, I was able to connect with some young adults with Usher syndrome, my same age, which was really transformative through the Usher Syndrome Coalition. So yeah, thank you so much. And then I believe Trevor is next.
Hello, everyone. I'll go ahead and just get started. So thank you, Maya. You know, my name is Trevor Turner, and I also have Usher's 2A, just like Maya. However, I am a little bit older, and I had a little bit of a different progression of my experience with Usher syndrome than Maya, by a product of being older, and also, even though we had the same type of Usher, I actually didn't notice it until a little bit older in my life. So I received my first pair of hearing aids when I was 2 years old. You know, I was born in 1987, so we didn't have the standard universal neonatal screening for hearing loss at the time. And so I was about, 10 months old when a babysitter told my mom that maybe your son's not hearing that well. And then, like I said, it was 2 years old when I got my first pair of hearing aids. I think that I'll have to be honest that for me, I think with Usher syndrome, there's a tendency to focus on the vision loss. But as a child, I didn't start noticing my vision loss until I was about 16 years old. So primarily, my hearing was my disability as a child and what was my main concern as a student in elementary school, middle school, and high school. But to talk a little bit more about myself, I am originally from South Dakota, but my dad, when I was 10 months old, decided that he didn't want to raise me and my future siblings in a small town, rural farming community in South Dakota. So he decided to join the Air Force, which was a major, major decision because that allowed me to have access to really good healthcare for the military insurance and access to a really good education system that I probably would not have gotten in the community that I lived in South Dakota. So that was huge, just giving me that access to, really good speech therapists and good educators and programs that allowed me to be really successful in my life. So we moved a lot, and if you're familiar with the military, they move you around a lot. And so my family growing up, we moved every couple of years. And so that meant that in school, I always had to reintroduce myself to teachers and counselors and principals and things like that, because we were living in completely different places. I lived in Japan growing up. We also lived in Mississippi and Colorado and Germany. And in each time I had to work with the new teachers and new principals and counselors in order to explain my IEP. And one thing I would like to say, thank you all so much as educators, because educators were so critical in my life to helping me succeed and go to college and get my grad degree. And so thank you all so much for everything that you do and the support. It really makes a huge impact on a student's life, and not even at the moment, but also 30 years later, like for me. Because eventually we graduated high school in Missouri, and I went to the University of Missouri. And it was actually a counselor and an educator who introduced me to the voc rehab program in Missouri, vocational rehabilitation program in Missouri. And that was what helped pay for my college at the University of Missouri. And my mom and dad would not have known about that program if it weren't for that educator and counselor that introduced me to that program and helped me apply to that program. So I think educators can be a major resource for parents and kids with disabilities to point them in the right directions for finding resources that help them succeed. I would say that I thrived in college. I triple majored in political science, international studies, and German. I also studied abroad 3 different times. So I really, really enjoyed college, and I was really politically active as well, because I went to college during the 2008 presidential campaign. And so there was a very exciting time to be in college and be politically active. It was in college when I discovered that I had Usher syndrome. So I started noticing, like I said before, when I was about 16 years old in high school, that I was not seeing as well as my peers and my family. And we didn't really think much of it. I asked an optometrist once, and said, "Oh, you probably just have a little bit of night blindness. That's normal. Don't worry about it." And so it was kind of a joke. Like, it was just kind of like, "Oh, Trevor can't see at night." And I didn't really think much of it. But it wasn't until I was about 19 when I finally was like, I really want to, there's got to be something going on. There's something I can do, because it seems to be getting worse. And so I asked an ophthalmologist, and when he referred me to a retina specialist, and when I was talking to her, she kept asking about my hearing. She noticed that I wore hearing aids. And I told her that I'm not here for my hearing. I know that I have a hearing loss. I have a severe hearing loss, but I wear hearing aids for that. I'm fine. I came here for my vision. And she's like, "No, I think they're related." And that's when she gave me the symptomatic diagnosis of USH2A, or actually Usher syndrome. That's what it was, just simply Usher type 2. Because at the time, this was in 2007, there was no genetic diagnosis that was available for everyone, and they hadn't even found the gene yet. So it was all a symptomatic diagnosis. And at the time, they told me that basically I had to prepare to go blind. And honestly, they made it sound much, much, much worse than it actually ended up being. And so it was kind of devastating for me. And when I found out that diagnosis, I really decided that I couldn't wait to pursue my dreams of seeing the world and living abroad. So I have to do this now, because I don't think I'll be able to do it when I'm older. And so that's what really motivated me in college to be very politically active. I became the Disabilities Caucus chairman for the College Democrats of America. So I worked with across college campuses across the country to promote disability-related issues at college universities. And then, like I said, I studied abroad 3 times, because twice in Germany and once in Ghana. And then after college, I got a State Department fellowship and went to Germany for a year and worked for the foreign ministry in Germany for a year. And then after that, I went and taught English in South Korea for a year. And then I was accepted into the Korbel School of International Studies at the University of Denver. And I got my master's with Peace Corps Master's International Program. So I did Peace Corps in conjunction with my master's, and I did the Peace Corps in Armenia. And then after graduating college, I moved to Rwanda and helped develop a business entrepreneurship program for women in Rwanda. And it was in Rwanda where I met my employer that brought me to Minnesota, which is the Starkey Hearing Foundation. Starkey, as many people are probably very familiar with in the hard of hearing and deaf and hard of hearing community, Starkey is America's only manufacturer of hearing aids, as the rest of the hearing aid manufacturers are all based in Europe. And it's based in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And I was in Rwanda and I met the East African director for the Starkey Hearing Foundation, and I volunteered on a hearing mission there. And they brought me to Minnesota for an interview with the CEO of Starkey. And I guess they liked me because they asked me, we're leaving for the Philippines tomorrow, do you want to come? And I worked for them for 4.5 years. And I was the international programs manager. We're managing 70 programs around the world. So I've done a lot of traveling, and I've spent a lot of time working in different hearing communities, hard of hearing communities, and deaf and hard of hearing communities in, East Africa, Southern Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and South America and the Caribbean. So I've been very, very fortunate to have made my dream of seeing the world while I could still see the world a reality. But that was all based on the kind of encouragement and empowerment that educators gave me. I always had that growing up. And like Maya said, I had an IEP with every teacher every year. And because we moved, I always had to introduce the IEP all the time. And at the time, like Maya said, I hated them at the time, but now I realize how important it was and how much of an advocate they were being for me. And then I really, really benefited from just being pointed in the right direction, and educators being aware of different disability programs and being able to help me out. And what really helped me was teachers encouraging me to be an advocate for myself, not being afraid to go and talk to a teacher and requesting, accommodations. I remember being in a Spanish class, and they had this really old speaker system that they were using for some lessons where they would play different Spanish sentences and music and things like that. And I just struggled to hear it, and I just couldn't respond to it. And I was not going to be able to do well on the assignments because of having to hear on a really old system. So I finally just said, I can't do this. I need help. And so they allowed me to, read a transcription instead, which helped me immensely. I will say that sometimes one thing of advice I would have for educators is, I remember one time when I was in 2nd grade and they installed an FM loop system in the school and they made me use it. And I really protested it. I didn't think I needed it. For me, the best accommodations were to sit in front of a classroom and be close to the teacher. That was like the main thing. I just want to be close to the teacher, and as long as I'm close, I'll be fine. But they wanted me to try this FM system, and I absolutely hated it because, I could only hear the teacher and I couldn't hear my fellow classmates. And there were so many times when the teacher would go to the bathroom and I could hear her in the bathroom through my hearing aids, or I could hear them talking about different plans with other teachers and sometimes inappropriate things, that they didn't know that I could hear in. And I just refused to use it. And so I think, sometimes really listening to the students' needs, and if they really resist it, you might think that you're trying to help them and it's for their good, but in reality is you got to meet them where they're at and their willingness. Because honestly, we know our disability the most. We know what we need, and just teach. I think the biggest thing that you can do for a student is just teaching them to be an advocate for themselves, to empower them, and give them ample opportunities to be an advocate for themselves, so that they have lots of practice, so that when they get older, they can continue being an advocate for themselves as they get older. Because really, the only people really thinking about the disability is me. You know, like, most people aren't thinking about disabilities the way I do every day. And so I think that's what's really, really important. And one thing about Usher syndrome is that it's kind of a lonely thing, because when I diagnosed when I was 19, I didn't know anyone, and there weren't really a lot of resources. The Usher Syndrome Coalition was very much in its infancy. I did reach out to Mark Dunning of the Usher Syndrome Coalition, and he did connect me with some resources, but it was really isolating and alone. I never met anyone with Usher syndrome until 2019, last year, when I went to the Usher Syndrome Coalition conference in Philadelphia. And I was there. It was the first time in my life, and I was 30 years old, and it was the first time in my life that I ever met somebody else with Usher syndrome. And it inspired me to be more active in that. And so I decided to become an Usher syndrome ambassador to help promote more Usher syndrome awareness in the state of Minnesota, and to connect newly diagnosed people with resources, and just to be a resource for the state. And it's continued, like I said, it's really it's encouraging me to be more of an activist in the disability space as well. So I have been doing a lot of volunteer work and a lot of connecting and networking with disability leaders across the country in the recent years, especially because the pandemic has really affected people with disabilities at a much higher rate than able-bodied people. So I think it's really important that, you know, people with disabilities are advocates for themselves, and that that empowerment, that, you know, nothing about us without us. I think that's really important. So I think that's all I have to say. If you want to go, thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And I believe Nancy shared your email address for you and Maya as ambassadors in her presentation. So if it's good, do people just email you if they have questions or something, or do you and Maya connect up with individuals, or how does that work for the ambassadorship that way?
Absolutely. So depending on what the question or the subject matter is, I might be able to provide the answer, and if I don't know the answer, I will point you in the direction of somebody that does.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
We are going to move to Jessica Eggert now, who's going to be sharing her story. I'm just going to let her know that it's her turn, so she can turn on her camera, and then I will disappear. We hope everybody's been enjoying these wonderful panelists so far. I think making the experience of having Usher syndrome come alive is the best. Here's Jessica.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hey, everybody. My name is Jessica, although I prefer people call me Jess. I have Usher's type 1B. I just found out that it's hereditary. I mean, it was forever to get the genetic test. I went to Boys Town, and the doctor who was doing it retired. Then I had to go to Virginia, but I finally got the results out of Mayo. So I'm 43. And so basically my type and results is when I found out. I'm 43 when I knew. I grew up also in Minnesota. I was born in St. Paul and born hard of hearing. found out when I was 9 months old and started using hearing aids. Then when I was around 2, basically I lost the rest of my hearing, just became profoundly deaf, and the hearing aids were no longer of any value. I was very lucky though, that I was able to use my eyes and depend on my vision. And at the time, of course, I had no idea what was going on. I thought something might be wrong, but we had no idea. Like, I was able to pick up sound and use my ears for that until I was about 15. I got a cochlear when I was 15. I do remember the sound of water running. I remember saying a few words. I certainly had speech therapy, and I used C sign in elementary school, so just full on English signing, and I was mainstreamed. They discovered I was ushers, and I had ushers at 10, and that was because of a teacher. That there was a teacher who I hated, absolutely hated, and again, extremely grateful for, because if it wasn't for that particular teacher, I don't know when I would have found out if I had ushers or not, you know? So my parents were, my mom was very resistant. The doctor was very resistant to the idea. Speaking of denial, there was a lot of denial in the family, in me and in everything. I think for my mom, she just didn't want to know, and I didn't want to know. I think mostly for my mom, it was just like, I don't care what's wrong, just tell me what to do next. And then boom, my sister also has ushers. So that teacher suspected that there might be something going on and told me about it. I knew something was wrong with my eyes. I did, by 2nd grade. But I mean, it was just like, I could not play hide and seek. I mean, and so because I could never find anybody, and then I could tell that at dusk I had trouble. It's really, dusk was when I was really, you know, enough for me to be able to not see at night. So it wasn't like I had no night vision. I had no afternoon, evening vision. So I couldn't do anything like that. It was like, I wouldn't go to my friend's house. I wouldn't do anything that took me out of my environment at night. I would not swim at the lake after dusk because I was sure I was going to drown. I didn't want to be in unknown environments. And a lot of that stuff, it was just fear. There was so much fear. So again, a teacher noticed that as soon as they turned off the, we went to the planetarium one time to look at all the stars, and that teacher noticed I couldn't see a darn thing as soon as the lights went out. That even with an interpreter, I couldn't see. Even though the interpreter wore white gloves, they couldn't see. And so in school, I was learning all of sort of like O&M, real world stuff. The kids were learning how to ride buses. They were teaching us all about how to get around downtown, things like that. And I hit a pole. I almost was run over by a car when I stepped off a sidewalk. I used to go to the Science Museum, and I loved that sidewalk downtown. I get all really interested in stuff, but I couldn't tell where the cars were. I couldn't see anything in my peripheral vision. That I would be looking at something and the entire class would move on, and I had no idea where everybody was, and I would panic because I had not seen where everybody moved on to. And so I would just kind of go through the museum by my own. And I constantly was missing instructions and constantly doing things wrong and constantly getting in trouble for it. I'd get yelled at by the teacher, I'd get yelled at by my parents, and I had no idea that it was just because I had missed a set of instructions, I had missed some sort of indicator because I just literally did not see it. So the teacher who yelled at me was essentially the same one who told my mom that I had to go get tested. So we went to a specialist, went to an eye doctor, and I resisted it, but the teacher said, "You can't see. I know you can't see." She said, this is a 5th grade teacher. And she said, "You know what? You can't hear and you have a vision problem. So think of it. I'm going from kindergarten through 5th grade, just figuring out how to adapt on my own." And so finally in 5th grade was when I got taken to the doctor. And it really took some convincing. And it was like, you have to take her to an ophthalmologist. And the teacher basically said, "If you don't do it, I will." Which I remember my mom kind of like, "Ugh, okay, fine." So took me to the eye doctor. I remember being there all day without an interpreter. I mean, at that time, they didn't have the ADA in place. So of course I wasn't required to have one. So I had no idea what was happening. I'm just there all day long doing whatever they tell me. It's like, ask me to do this, ask me to do that. And I was dealing with, you know, my mom signing C to me. They put me in the dark. They did tests. And then they recognized that I had no night vision. Then they did the periphery vision test, found out, and my mom just started crying. I had no idea why. She just started crying. Then we get home, she talks to Dad, they start crying. I have no idea why. I didn't hear, they weren't explaining any of it to me. So finally I had to confront my mom and say, I don't know what just happened all day, but I have a right to know what the answer is or the diagnosis. And then finally Mom signed to me, you will go blind. I remember, and I said no. And she said, no, that's what we were testing, is that we know you can't see in the dark. We know that over time you will lose your vision. And that's why I'm upset. That's why your dad's upset. That was awful. I remember that I was in such grief. I was in such difficulty. And I used to get bullied a lot. And when I went to a school for the deaf, because my IQ test had done, I remember I was assigned an inappropriate number way back when. Then I think that once I got the cochlear, everybody expected me to function as a hearing person, which of course I wasn't. And so finally I went to HPC and Como. I think it was Como that finally said, you know, look, we can't do things where you're going to do speech tests, where you cover a person's hand and ask her to lip read or do anything. We can't do that. So I finally got a certified teacher who was certified to work with deaf-blind students. That was it for me. I studied Braille, I learned protactile, I learned haptics, I've learned everything, and everything that I could possibly learn for the future. I did not like the fact that I was different than my classmates. That bothered me a lot. I just feel like I was the only one there, that all this thing was happening to everybody else and I was the only one without it. And so, I mean, think about it, it's middle school. And so I am really angry. It's like everybody was comparing me to Helen Keller and I just hated that. I hated typing class. I hated anything that where I felt like I was really, really different. I remember being in a lot of self-doubt. I remember teachers offering me lots of support, being really patient with my outbursts and my tantrums, that they were really understanding of the grieving process that I was going through. Now, they couldn't fully understand what it felt like, of course, because they had not gone through it themselves, but they were really able to recognize the grief that I was experiencing and offering me lots of support. And I'm really grateful for that. And also we used a lot of learning technology at HPC. I think that that was great. Some of the stuff that I was able to learn before my vision got worse. I don't know how well I'd be able to learn the things I know now if I hadn't seen. It would have been harder for me to do it as an adult. Like, you know, it would have been harder now to learn Braille than it was when I was 10 or when I was younger, because of course my fingers are more sensitive. And then at this point, my right eye has light sensitivity. My left eye has a lot of vision, but I also have some light sensitivity in that eye. And then I also have a guide dog. Once again, thank you to the School for the Blind for making sure that that happened for me and orienting me, doing O&M stuff for me as a person who was going to have vision loss. I am so grateful to every teacher I had. Certainly I had bad experiences, but I overcame everything and all the barriers in part because of that. So as I've learned, I've made it through. And I'm a survivor, period. That's just me. I have some mental health issues. I've been suicidal in the past. I, again, have made it through. So Usher's causing a depression being a separate thing, I don't really know how much there's a correlation there. A lot of my diagnoses don't fit together, but I have Charles Bonnet syndrome is what the diagnosis is, which means sort of a combination of mental health stuff and Usher's. And so I don't know if it's just something particular. And they've been trying to give me medication for things that, and I just basically have said to people, I'm losing my vision. Again, it's mostly tunnel vision. And sometimes I will see things that aren't there. And there were other teachers, again, who indicated that I might have some mental health issues. And so I went to a doctor, a very well-known doctor, and they were able to give me some medication to reduce some of those hallucinogenic visions and then lower my stress, which often was the trigger. And also help me arrange so that lighting environments were always standard, because I can't move from one lighting environment to another one. Again, learning how to manage what I was going on. So, because like for me, if I move from one extreme lighting event to another, it actually triggers stuff in my brain, in my neural cortex that'll trigger hallucinatory vision. So it's been really interesting to learn about that too. Let's see what else, just to share about myself. I'm the chairperson for the DeafBlind committee. And I'm the community representative for the Rehab Council and at SSB services too for the blind. I'm their representative. I have some very unique skills. I am really good at multitasking. I am a person who can do several things at the same time. So I'm working with a Braille reader, and I can do an iPad at the same time. I have no problem thinking about issues while I'm doing something else. I'm very creative. I think extremely out of the box, much more than most people. And I think that's because of who I am. With the guide dog, I've got a lot of work that I've done. My BVI teacher and counselor to you, I highly recommend, don't hold back a person's high school diploma. Don't do some of that. Don't hold back. Don't, you just need to be one more year in the program and then you'll be ready. And then you'll be ready. And then you'll be ready. It's like, no. People with ushers are highly intelligent. They're able to graduate from high school. They're able to go to college. Keep those expectations high. People might make assumptions about what is going on with them, like they did with me. I did go to college. I didn't quite finish because there were a lot of barriers in the particular major that I was in, and there weren't a lot of advisors that were really helpful to me, but I have still survived. And I'm learning now at Helen Keller, I'm learning a bunch of stuff that is appropriate to me. So allow those deafblind students to show who they are and be who they are. If they're ready to graduate, send them out. Don't try to take care of them. Let them be who they are. Don't make decisions for them. Don't make decisions for me. I don't like that either. So don't assume what is and isn't possible for them. Mostly just let them know whatever's possible for them, they should try it. So don't suppress who they are. I experienced that a lot of people underestimating me, a lot of people deciding things for me. And all that did was make me more furious and make me more determined and resilient to be who I am. But it really makes sure that those students have access, have what they need, and are treated like everyone else. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Your stories are powerful and great reminders for teachers to remember to keep those standards high and to have that communication, that dialogue back and forth. So thank you very much. We're gonna move on now. I'm turning off my camera and turning it over to Ryan. Ryan, if you would like to segue into the presentation that you have, that would be great. I can run that behind the scenes here for you, and you can just kind of flag me and let me know when you'd like me to move on. I can do a screen share. Yep. And so you can just kind of signal me to move on to the next slide. Okay, thank you.
Yes, hello, my name is Ryan. My name sign is this, R up the palm of my hand, and I want to share some of my growing up experiences and who I am now and how I got there from A to B, from then till now. For my background, I grew up here in the Twin Cities, in the Southern Metro, Burnsville area. And I was born deaf. And I had Usher's type 1B, My parents, they really didn't know, they weren't aware that I had Usher's until I was around age 5. And that was back in 1987, 88-ish, around there. And the reason that came about is when I started missing things, started missing information. I couldn't find things. I would drop it on the floor, and then, like a pencil, for example. And, I'd be looking all over. I couldn't find the pencil. I'd have to feel. And then it would take me a while until I could finally find it. And my parents started suspecting that something was wrong with my vision. And so they decided to go ahead and set up an appointment to meet with an eye doctor to have an exam. And they did notice that there were vision problems. It wasn't an official diagnosis. I didn't get that until I was 9, so 4 years later. So now I'm understanding that I'm deaf-blind. I didn't have the appropriate testing set up to make that determination until a little bit later in my life. But like I said, I was born deaf and I grew up signing. I had strong ASL skills. My parents took classes and learned ASL. They took a lot of different classes in the area to learn that language. My language took off, so I had communication. And when I was about 5, I got the cochlear implant. That was 1988 at the University of Iowa in Des Moines. And that community at that time was doing a lot of clinical testing with young kids at age 5 to get the cochlear implant. And so I was actually part of that study group. They tested, how the cochlear implant would help my speech, how it would help picking up different parts of language. And so I did a lot of speech therapy. My oral skills did take off. And I continued that for 3 or 4 years. And then I stopped. So I was in elementary school between 4th and 5th grade. And I stopped that because I felt like I really just wanted to focus on having ASL be my primary language. And so going back up a little bit, my identification as a deaf-blind person growing up in school, I was learning and I was recognizing, that, so people would ask if you can see, and I would say, no, my vision is fine. My parents and my teachers felt like they noticed my vision was changing and that I had vision issues, and I didn't understand what deaf-blind meant. I didn't understand a vision loss, but I kept thinking about it, and as time went on, it took many, many years before I actually really started to understand what it meant to be deaf-blind and what vision loss really was about and how that would actually impact my life. My dad, he wrote an article under the name of DeafBlind, and it was the National Deaf-Blind Association, NFADB, and that's a family agency for deaf-blind families. And the agency has different information that they provide. And my dad actually wrote an article, and he emphasized the importance of exposure to different life experiences, and how that helps the learning and getting involved in different activities and interests and providing a wide variety of things to do. So my dad brought me all kinds of different places. I went to Canada and I went fishing. I went to Florida and I went to Disney World and went a wide variety of places. Went on boat rides and a cruise, and had a lot of enjoyable experiences and being exposed to learning all kinds of different things. And that really, really helped me broaden my interest levels into all kinds of different things over the years. I like to be outside in nature. I like to do things. And then it's also helped develop my perspective and help me realize that there are a lot of things I can do. When I went to school and the teachers helped set up the IEP, and I would go to the meetings with my parents, understanding I wasn't an active participant in those meetings. I did attend them. I would sit there and just kind of listen to what was happening or share some of the things that I was interested in or different things that would motivate me. And as time went along, I did notice that some of my interests, those weren't developed during the K-12 years. However, my interests and things that I had looked forward to, I really learned a lot from my dad and my family. And because of being involved in all the different things that my family helped me experience, it provided a good advocacy training for me. And then that led me to be interested in policy making and for parents to be involved and to expose and brainstorm and ideas and base the policies based on the different levels. It was partners in policy making and providing advice and counsel, different state departments. And my dad was also involved in that. And that was really inspiring to me. And again, as far as our family, we would go every year for a deaf-blind family weekend. And they were all over the state of Minnesota. We would meet different families that had deaf-blind. And then like here on the panel, I participated in things like that years ago. Again, meeting different parents or families or being part of the DeafBlind project and being very aware. And I actually did not identify my path compared to where I am now. A lot of that was because I felt a lot of isolation. I wasn't involved in the community. I stayed home quite a bit. My school was, a 30-minute drive back and forth because I went to school in St. Paul. And, how could I hang out with friends or know who my neighbors were because I didn't go to my neighborhood school. And so I wasn't involved with them. And there was also the communication barrier. The communication access really was a barrier in developing some of those life skills at that particular time. And socialization tended to happen at school for me, and it was limited to school. So during school, I would be a little bit more chill. I would focus on my academics. I wasn't highly motivated at school, a little bit more, taking a back seat. My vision was declining at that time. And then when I was about 15, it really, really hit me that I would be losing my independence. And then I really had to look at what I was going to do. And I became even further isolated at home. But again, thanks to my parents and the teachers, they continued to provide the support and reaching out and, suggesting different approaches or different accommodations, how they could support my learning and how that can continue so that I could graduate on time. Again, the teachers really had a strong influence and really appreciate all the importance of the different skills that I was learning, traveling skills, learning how to read Braille, learning how to pick up all kinds of different skills. And it was important that I took the opportunity to do that. That really helped. It didn't matter that I hated it. I hated all of that stuff. But at the same time, I still did it. and I know that it was beneficial. It really helped open my mind. It really helped me think that I had a future. And I did work during college when my life, that's when it really, really changed. And I had connections, you know, the K-12 experience to college years. When I look back, you know, college is when I started taking some time to be reflective on my high school years and the teachers that I had and the counselors and the family and how all of that influenced me, and really learned to appreciate that. And I understood that all of those folks were right. And so I recognized that I needed to do something. And so I was thinking back on all the different experiences I had growing up, and the travel and the connections with the deafblind families and the retreats we had and all the folks I met at all of those different weekends. And I started thinking, and that really caused a change in me. And I became a lot more active, and I really took off with learning advocacy skills, and wanted that to become a strength, and wanted to become a strong advocate for myself. I started speaking out a lot about the things that I needed, and you know, really taking opportunities to practice different skills that in different areas. At the Helen Keller, I really learned a lot of skills, and I started to recognize the success that was providing, and I was involved in different experiences and internships, and was involved with different town hall communications as a liaison. And again, those different skills, all those leadership skills started developing and providing some motivation for myself. And so that all of that eventually led to where I am now. I've developed some trust. I feel like I know more about life. I know about exposure. I have a lot of experience with different situations that life brings up. I made it through college. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I went on to a graduate program and earned my degree in special ed, with an understanding that there were a lot of barriers that I had along that journey. I took a lot of effort. It required just making those small successes, and really a lot of that, how it all related to my youth and my young years. It was because of my parents' strong advocacy and the exposure that they provided, and the teachers that I had, and the different trainings I was provided. Again, teachers that teach the O&M, the orientation and mobility, and the Braille skills, that really, really helped open my mind and provide different perspectives to things that I wasn't really understanding. So all of those little steps bring me where I am today. I'm married. I have 2 children. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I am working for the Helen Keller National Center as a regional representative, and I work with DeafBlind in 6 different states, so I'm traveling around. I'm very independent. I love traveling. I love to go. I've been to several different countries. I've been to Europe, Mexico, Canada. I've been throughout the Caribbean islands, a wide variety of places, and I really enjoy traveling. I'm hoping to travel some more. I enjoy fishing. I am a homeowner. You know, my wife and kids and I have a nice home that we live in. And again, my favorite thing is advocating. You know, we have a super system, and I think it's really important. It's a key element for my success is advocacy. And let's see if there is, I think time is out for this. And so I think it's time for us to move on to my presentation.
Any comments, or Anne, do I just go right into it? What do you need?
This is Anne. I'm just trying to get things set up really quickly. So it'll just give me just a minute. Thank you.
Okay. So Anne, I know I emailed you the PowerPoint, and I think she shared it with all the rest of you too. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Helen Keller National Center, which we often refer to as HKNC, but most of you know Helen Keller National Center, and that is where I'm working. It is an agency that works exclusively with deafblind people throughout the United States. It's a federally funded entity. We are funded through Congress as well. We have $16 million budget that we use every year for the services that we provide for deafblind individuals. We work with individuals from age 14 on, basically adults and seniors all the way from that point on till death. So basically it's services for life for anybody who needs them. Our agency collaborates with a lot of other state agencies, community agencies, basically any state deafblind projects that are running, we work with them. So that's what we do here with the state of Minnesota. We work with the state of Minnesota under the low incidence services, the projects here. So, and that's where Anne comes in. And Ruth is also involved in that too. So we have the local folks that I work with, and I collaborate with people all over. My job is to provide support to ensure continuing success for deafblind people to achieve independence. That is always our goal. Okay, next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the next thing. There we go. And you can go on to the next one. I think it has a list of, there we go, because you all three of them. So one of the things I want to talk with you about is, what does it take to succeed? I want to talk a little bit about transition programs and institutes, what are the options are, and a little bit about what resources are out there for you. Next slide, please. All of us have needs. Deafblind people have needs as well. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are wants versus needs. So if you see the needs, they're on the left-hand column. And then if there's a right-hand column here that talks about wants. So those are kind of some of the things that students might need growing up. So these are considerations that you have to think about with deafblind students. They need accommodations. They will need some sort of rehabilitation and training, skill development, anything to overcome some of that barriers, especially associated with the vision and hearing loss. And you have to be preparing them for life. That's the idea. They also need to explore academic and vocational interests, and that has to start young. Thinking about what do they want to do with their lives, what are their interests, and working with those students. They need to be exploring that. They need to be questioned. They need to be developing what they could possibly do with the idea of what they can do, not what they couldn't do. And so what you can do to research a path forward for those students is critical to guide that journey. If you've got a student who wants to become a physician, and maybe they might not be able to do that with the vision loss they have, but is there a related field that you can work them into? Is there some field related to medicine? Because there's so many things related to medical provision, medicine. What else is possibility? So rather than shutting out an entire vein of or entire path, what can you do to leverage the interest that that student has to bring them into that same area? So as much as you can. We really need to be exploring those vocational and academic interests. Now, in terms of the wants, a student needs social development. They need a support system because they have to develop so much of this stuff very deliberately. We go through a lot of stages in the process of being a person with Usher syndrome because our hearing changes, our vision changes, everything has to adjust. We might be a signing person, and as our vision changes, we might have to switch to a more tactile mode of speaking and communicating. So we really need a strong support system that can take us through that. That's our parents, that's our teachers, that's our friends, that's our mentors, our interveners, and all the other advocates that work with us. We need to understand who we are. I think that development of self-awareness is really huge. So I think that question of who are you? Who am I? Beyond being deaf-blind, but I'm still a person. I'm a person who's alive. I'm a person who can live a future, and I need to understand who I am and how I'm evolving. I think peer mentoring is very critical. And because there are so many challenges that pop up for an individual, we also feel like we need somebody to ask, how did you get through this? How do you deal with this? What's your experience been? And I think it's one of the things that can really help with that isolation that we all experience as people with Usher syndrome. I just really need somebody who is similar to our own path. So, and somebody we can really trust. I think because there are so many barriers in the educational system, in the employment systems, in life in general, and being in a home and being in a community, we really need problem-solving skills to be able to have good, healthy, wonderful access to everything and to understand how we overcome all of those societal barriers that are there. And so we have to develop the resilience that we need to be able to continue to confront those barriers and solve those issues. Like I was talking about, we want to give these students as many life experiences as you can. Take them everywhere. Give them as much exposure to everything that they can possibly do. Because as the vision changes or as everything else changes, they need to have so much experience and so much exposure that they can draw from to figure out how they can then apply that knowledge to the new situation that they're in. So they need to have enough tools to be self-sufficient as they grow. There are so many opportunities for deafblind youth at the Helen Keller National Center. Next slide. Let me talk about some of them. Some of the programs that we offer at the center are these. The first one is a summer transition program. We offer focus on two different areas in those transition plannings. One is a fairly short 1-week session. It's, well, 4 full days. And then we have a different one that's a 2-week session. The program is focused on career and post-secondary planning. So we're doing career and post-secondary exploration with these attendees, figuring out what they might want to do or what their next path is, what are their interests, and really what are their goals for the long term. We do what we call personal future planning, and we just abbreviate it PFP, and that's mostly just about the life skills. How are you going to maintain your health? How are you going to maintain what you need to be an independent person as you go through the rest of your life? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you need to do now to achieve those goals? And then we have a mentoring program, and that is working with a deafblind adult who can be your mentor to help you as you go through your planning and as you go through a college experience. So in essence, you have somebody who can be your role model and to turn to when you have different situations. They can also serve as somebody who is an example of what can be done. So lots of work done in those summer programs. Next slide. This is another area of service that we have. It's called the 6-week program in the summer, and it's focused on work experiences. And this is paid work, essentially internship experiences, so that the participants can really be working out in the competitive environment, seeing how things work, understanding what it's like to be a part of a team, understanding what it's like to be in a supervisory position or be supervised, knowing, understanding how HR works, how does hiring work, how does interview work, how do you discover where you want to work. So this is particularly beneficial for deafblind young people. It's again, giving them an exposure so they have a sense of what's out there and how things work, quote unquote, so that they can then pursue whatever their particular interests are beyond that. And I think we got several bullet points on this. Let's move on. I think we have some pictures of some of the people from the program. So if you hit the bar a couple times, then you can see some of the work experiences that we're providing in the summer program. Yep. Okay, moving on. Yep. The third program that we offer is what we call our assessment program, which is the opportunity for high school students to get a sense of, I mean, once they're 14 and 15 and in high school, we can figure out what their core areas are that they need to focus on for development. They can get an idea of what do they have already in terms of strengths and training, and what other training might they need as they go through this vision loss and hearing loss process. We, of course, most of these are associated with independent living, employment, communication, perhaps learning Braille, and also working with technology and O&M, independent travel kind of mobility skills. That program is usually provided one-on-one with the idea that all the instruction is individualized and customized to the individual. So that particular student, that particular process, that particular person's needs and journey. And we just get through that learning curve of understanding some of these things that a person might need. We also have the opportunity, because they're going through this program, to socialize with other people going through the program as well. So it just helps with some of that self-esteem. Next slide. This is another program that we have. It's called the DeafBlind Immersion Experience. DBIE is what we call it. This is designed for individuals who are deafblind with additional disabilities. So that's sort of more of that, you know, typical disability programming. But of course, they have some different unique needs because of those additional disabilities. So in that case, we do a team approach for providing services. So we we basically have services available to the deafblind students, social workers, teachers, VR counselors, family members, or anybody else who might be interveners, PCAs, anybody who might be providing some services for those additional disabilities. So we teach some of those independent learning skills and work with the team and the deafblind individual to figure out what they need and how we can develop whatever skills are necessary for them to be successful in the workplace. We also try to identify the training that would be beneficial for that particular person's success. And all of this is really coordinated with, all of this is associated with employment. Next slide. This particular program with a comprehensive vocational rehabilitation program is our VR program. And that's a year-long program. And that's the opportunity for a deafblind person to really, after they've been through the assessment, we've identified their strengths, their needs for training, we've offered some of that training, then we're looking at being a part of this program where it's all about job training. It's all about developing those skills for employment. And the program's goal is that the person finds competitive employment, or has a plan for competitive employment for the long term. So this is sort of the tag end of that journey of all the other work that we've been doing. So we're doing a lot of on-site work experiences, internships, helping that person develop the confidence and the competence they need to be a self-advocate, a better self-advocate for themselves in the employment setting. These are kind of the training that we provide over the course of that year. Some of it might happen in the summer. Some of it might happen after the summer program when they have maybe, and this might be after they graduate from college, they need just another set of plans that have to do with what they're going to be doing. We maybe can do some of that in the schools in the falls, in the spring as needed. We might be able to sort of coordinate that with their college program. It's a pretty flexible program because it's individualized for the person and it is over the course of an entire year. And let's see, next slide. And of course, because we are in the COVID-19 year, we have to go virtual. It has been crazy, I know, for all of us, and we are no different than anyone else. This has been quite a challenge to figure out how we can maintain some of the instruction, the skills instructions, the advocacy, the deafblind services virtually. So we've been trying to find all kinds of virtual platforms and services that we might be able to provide, and some of them have worked much better than we thought. I think when we started in March, we just were not sure how it would go, and we're doing well. I think that this is becoming a long-term option for us, so that a person, instead of being able to, having to come to our programming, they might be able to do a hybrid, or they might be able to do the entire program virtually. So that's really been interesting. I think it offers us a lot more flexibility for people's individual needs, for their schedules going on with their life, because you've got somebody who's doing some heavy work at home, but then they can also do some of the work with us virtually. There's a lot of flexibility with it. It also allows much more customized kind of focus. So a person can say, this is what I want to focus on at this particular time, because we have those 5 areas of training. Maybe they can choose one, work on it for a while, churn on something else. Again, individualizing. It allows us to be really creative and try to figure out how we can design this with the team. Next slide. We have transition institutes, which of course did not happen this year, but we have been able to do those each year. And those transition institutes are opportunities for some of those deafblind youth and their families to come together. And what they can do is learn about what are, it's all skill building stuff, advocacy, self-advocacy, futures planning. We do some of that vocational assessment stuff, figuring out what kind of the skills are that are weak and might need to learn in terms of independence. Next. And you can keep going. These are just some pictures from the Transition Institute. Some of the things that we do with the youth. A lot of it is recreational. We just have a great time. There are some deafblind people who never have any kind of outdoor experience. And so this is their first opportunity to really get out there in nature and figure out what else might be available to them. So I think opening up their minds to possibilities is a big part of what we're going to do. We're going to change interpreters. Okay, hold on one moment. So we're offering peer support.
Okay, great. And then again, we provide this mentoring and some transition services looking for what will be next. The next slide, please. Yeah, and so here we have resources. We talk about the different resources available for teachers, for families, for parents, things to consider to provide access. Next slide. And there are different state deafblind projects that have different resources, and there's plenty of lists. And so we collaborate with the different, the Minnesota Coalition for the Deafblind, and develop all the resources that folks can take advantage of, and maybe like the IDEA and different information that we can provide, different transitional things, how to get the students, how they handle developmental things that come up during high school, different considerations to make, different approaches that are available. Like maybe how to change the IEP to become a PCP, a person-centered approach. How the teachers can empower the deafblind students to take the lead. And then also for the parents, different tools, how to guide them, what's their role? How does that change when they become adults? How do you do career planning? All those kinds of things. College planning, providing support, providing interpreters, different resources, learning more about those, different IEP considerations. There's just a wide variety of resources. Next slide, please. The NCDB, National Center on Deafblindness. This organization, it does provide different technology assistance, the TAs, different ways to provide tools for the parents. Again, the deafblind projects all over the US. Again, we're involved in developing tools for research, webinars, information, pulling up different training webinars, a whole list of things. I really would encourage you all to go ahead and take a look at the different resources that they provide and the benefits that it could provide to the students that you work with and the different deafblind folks that you're involved with. Next slide. HKNC, the Helen Keller National Center, that's a regional, again, I'm the regional rep for the Midwest. My work focuses on providing advocacy for deafblind and providing their future planning, figuring out the path that they should take, talking about or having different consultation times with folks, maybe with parents, with schools, other agencies, again, discussing how to most empower the deafblind person, what kind of changes that can be made to make their access easier, different resources, information, again, different tools and training, different programs that are available, services that would ultimately help the deafblind with their future and their developing, becoming an independent person and getting prepared for after they graduate high school. And a point of contact for any of these, if you're considering the tapping into the resources that Helen Keller has to offer, you can go ahead and contact me. We do provide IEP advocacy. We provide support for the team. Parents, we help the parents with different considerations, providing different options that they might have for their youth. We also, at Helen Keller, we offer a lot of online trainings. We have a wide variety of areas that you can access information. Again, for parents, for agencies, go ahead and take advantage of that. That will help you learn more about what's out there for deafblind, for different communication, how to work with them, different situations, how to handle those, different trainings. We offer a wide variety, and at this time, they're free until December 31st. And then, you know, if coronavirus continues, that has been a huge barrier for us. And so I would encourage all of you to go ahead and take advantage of those trainings that are offered free at this time. It will only benefit your work. There's a short list here that shows the different areas that we provide trainings. And also some of them come with gathering CEUs. Haptics is one example. Advocacy and deafblind, the world, encouraging them to develop their understanding how to support the youth and how to help them become a better advocate. And again, all of these trainings are free at this time. The contact information, if you're interested in learning more about, again, the different topics and issues related to deafblindness, my contact information is listed there. You can call me by phone or text. And of course, email. I forgot to put that down. Sorry. You can contact me anytime though. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing. It's wonderful information. We really appreciated your stories, and also for sharing HKNC information and making the link to a variety of different organizations, as well as the information about webinars, because I think that's something that's coming out of this pandemic season, is that there are more opportunities for us to learn more because webinars are posted online. So I appreciate you highlighting those specific areas that would be beneficial and helpful for teachers and other professionals. So I think what we're gonna do is we're going to wrap up right now and get ready to go to lunch. But I just wanted to I've been taking some notes while I was listening, and one of the things, I heard some common threads when people were sharing their stories. And one of the things I think is that this is a journey. It's not like someone is going to understand it all in one fell swoop. It's an experience because vision changes, because of all of this, the transitions that happen. You might be, as teachers, you might be having more information. You might be frustrated. Well, why doesn't the student understand this? Why don't they accept the help now? But I think what you probably heard when you were listening to the 4 different people and their lived experiences growing up, and then especially in those teen years, is that teachers plant seeds. You are giving them information that they will reflect on as they go through life. So I want to encourage teachers to continue to do that, continue to share information, continue to be patient, and continue to just remember that this is a journey, and it's often one that is lonely. So the more you can provide support, I saw that again and again, that the support that you offer, the listening ear that you offer, the connection that you help them make, even the niggling that you do, the prompting, think about this, it's all valuable. So I wanted to take a moment just to kind of encourage our teachers with that. And then finally, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists. Again, thank you for joining us. We are going to be wrapping up for lunch now. I want to remind people that we do have the link in the DeafBlind Community of Practice shared drive for the afternoon session. I am going to be sharing it here in the chat for the afternoon session, because now this webinar is wrapping up and we will be closing it. If you are not a member of the Community of Practice, you can decide if you want to join us or not. We are going to be focusing on the DeafBlind Community of Practice. We have someone coming in presenting about communities of practice in general to help us kind of get some ideas of how we want to move forward. So you're welcome to join us. People who are not in the Community of Practice and who are not perhaps have a stake in that, you are done for the day, for this session. We know that you're still working the rest of the day. So again, thank you so much for making time to join us today. We hope that you have learned so much like we have. We are always learning something new. So for those of you who are joining us after lunch, we're gonna come back at 12:45. You can leave this link. If you do not have the link to the Zoom meeting, I'm putting in the chat right now. So that is available for you all after lunch. Have a great lunch. See you in a half an hour. Bye-bye.